really excited to be a part of this landmark initiative which Election Commission is harped on, and I personally quite excited, and I somewhere have a firm belief that we'll reach to this very fast. I'm going to give you a perspective because I come from a technology organization, National Informatics Center, who run ICT infrastructure for our government as a whole. So I'm going to give you a perspective and give you a scene that where are we as far as ICT infrastructure for government is concerned, which will be leveraged for doing any initiative of this kind. So NIC has been building data centers for government for almost 2 decades now. We have national data centers at Delhi, Pune, Hyderabad and Bhubaneswar. And we also have state level data centers in almost every state capital. These data centers are housing, I should say, about 95% of e-governance what you see in this country, whether it is over 7,000 government websites which is hosted across these various data centers. Going further, we also co-locate a whole lot of infrastructure for applications like this transport sector, which we have all vehicle registration, driving licenses, passport, the previous passport system, land records, and all these exam results and the counseling for admission to citizens. I am saying that these kind of issues where citizens touch base and where these have legal implications, we have been having these systems in India. I definitely agree that they all, if you see from legal perspective, they perhaps do not fully address the requirement or the concerns of each stakeholder, be it student, be it a parent, or be it an institution. But that is how history of IT has been in the past. I mean, there has been always kind of, you introduce systems and then you get into what is the legal aspects, when you have cases, then you change your IT Act and then you bring amendments. That's how things have been happening in the past. We have Election Commission in India is one of, it's known for its pioneering IT all across the world, and we at NIC feel very proud to be associated with them for over 2 decades in their journey of adoption of technology, right from basic announcement of election results to going on today when they're talking of remote voting and things like this. We host, besides election results, we host Election Commission portal, which gives you all kinds of services, whether it is voter education, whether it is searching the voter list, or updating your electoral roll, or getting to know your polling stations. And we also have some of these state election offices who also host their portals and websites in R, which becomes very active when we have these state level elections in terms of getting information not only about the electorate for that matter, but also for the candidates and their various declaration they make and things like this. So this has been there's been an extensive use of IT as far as Election Commission is concerned, and the ICT infrastructure for that is provisioned through this. See, if you look at these applications like Election Commission or exam results, these are the applications which have a kind of a particular surge, a peak. They peak at a certain time, whether it is politically initiated or administratively initiated. Exam results will only be there. But when we had these co-located systems, we have been basically putting, and all these systems were always programmed with infrastructure which will cater to their peak. But peak may only happen for a week in a year. And we had, and this is a kind of a typical characteristics of many government systems, whether it is announcement of budget or whether it is submission of taxes for that matter, which only comes once in quarter. So in our data centers, the last 10 years, we have been seeing there's a huge equipment which is lying, which is largely underutilized for a large part of the year. And this obviously caters to that particular thing. Looking at this, couple of maybe around 2012 or something, we started offering virtualized infrastructure. We said, you do not bring your infrastructure in machines, we'll give you virtual machines and start. And 2013, our department came with a cloud policy, and under this we set up our first national cloud, which is self-service cloud available on cloud.gov.in. and this cloud is today available to all government departments as center as well as state. When we were architecting and trying a blueprint of this cloud, besides being those typical requirements or objectives which any cloud setup agency will have, like optimal utilization of infrastructure, putting in elasticity in infrastructure, self-service and all those things, there were three things which we focused particularly when we were doing it. One thing we said, we need to have an infrastructure which has to facilitate government to go live in a very fast manner. They should not wait for 4 months, 6 months to year to procure ICT. So we should be able to provide capacity to any government to launch an initiative, whether it is a local initiative into a block or it is a large initiative at a national level. Second thing we said, we should not never get into any vendor lock-in situation. We definitely use a lot of commercial solutions, but at the end our solution has to be generic enough to be able to accommodate commercial solutions as well as open source solutions, kind of. And third thing, which is very important in today's context, is the security. We said whatever cloud we set or whatever applications we host on this, by the process of design and by the governance mechanism, it has to be compliant with whatever guidelines certain is an agency in India which prescribes all guidelines and all, it has to comply with this. So we have built in security not only at the infrastructure level where we have multi-stage security right from firewalls to information systems to IPS to going forward we even have we even have devices to protect so-called insecure applications over the time, so application firewalls and their configurations. And then going forward we have DDoS appliances which takes care of any kind of a DDoS attack on the infrastructure. So this is on the infrastructure part, and then we have a full-fledged cyber security division which is other than the data center division, so which kind of two people work always neck to neck and sometimes even fighting to each other, because we people try to provision and they try to sort of tell us, no, you can do this and you cannot do this. So, but this is an ongoing, but this is something which is good and healthy kind of environment. So infrastructure wise, there's a complete team, there's a complete SOC which looks into it. Then going forward to application, when you are before application, when you are making virtual machines, the virtual machines, unlike when you go and get on Amazon or not, has to comply with certain security standards. It has to get into vulnerability assessment every quarter. It need to have antivirus already onto it. It need to comply with the hardening guidelines for the servers given by certain. All those things have to be mandatorily compliant, and into a governance system, these things are assessed on all these machines every quarter. And any time you fall non-compliant at any point of time, you're not only alerted, your machines also may be taken off the net in case you continue to be non-compliant. Going forward, now when it comes to applications, because you have this cyber security or cyber threat spectrum very, very wide. So when it comes to application, every application has to not only undergo performance audit, it has to undergo a full-fledged security audit. And security audit is mandatory for you to be putting your application into production, which is a kind of, and that also has to be repeated at certain frequency depending on nature of application, every year or every 6 months, depending on how critical and how vulnerable your application is. So all these mechanisms have been put in, but to make the whole infrastructure and the whole and a set of applications being powered through this cloud secure to the extent. But having said, I'm not saying, and the access to all those machines for administration and all is again on a government private network through which only you can access these machines for any kind of an activity on these machines. So whatever possible technology measures have been taken, but I definitely understand when we get into applications like remote voting, we may have to further up our standards, we have to further put our applications onto it. But I personally feel that today we have a technology, is an application of the technology, we work towards this, we are up for that challenge and we can surely take care of that. Our vision in cloud computing has been always that we should try and make departments completely, let them not worry how to procure ICT infrastructure, how do they enhance their infrastructure, how do they scale their infrastructure. That should not be their concern. That should be complete. They should be assured that whatever infrastructure at what scale we require, that will be provisioned to you. Just simply don't bother. Or any commercial solution, non-commercial solution you want, that will be given to you. So that we want these government departments or bureaucrats to focus on their core competency, which is to be able to deliver services to citizens in a more and more easy and friendly manner. So you want them to innovate, and you want to help through this cloud solution, help them innovate, say they can do various experiments, launch various kinds of services, see their performance, further improve them, and so on. So that's what we're trying to do. It's too early, but we are seeing a lot of positives out here. In terms of our services on cloud offerings, if you look at this, is very different from the normal commercial offerings. They are more from the government requirement. The way we were doing non-cloud manner, that is how we have tried to keep. So you ask in a simple terms, I need 2 web servers, I need 1 database server, and I need two app servers. That's all. Rest is, you don't have to specify. Your capacity automatically scales up as you start using more. It comes down when you're not using. Those things, those complexity is something you don't really need to bother. In terms of our architecture also, if you look at it, the way we have done, we have introduced a whole lot of optimization, because though, I mean, we are in government, doesn't mean that we have an abundance funds. So, and if it's to sustain over a long time, so not only we have built in different level of resiliency and redundancy as far as our stacks are concerned. So my production stack will have much high order of resiliency and redundancy compared to my development stack, because that doesn't need that kind of a thing. Going forward to storage, it simply needs to be government for regulations. Now you need to keep your log for 3 years, some people have to keep for 7 years, some people have to archive some transactions. So depending on what kind of requirement you have, what kind of application you have, corresponding storage is allocated to you. It's a complete archival based application, it's just a backup, compared with a huge transaction oriented application, accordingly you have been given storage. Then the network. Network also has been done primarily for 2 point. One is distribution of traffic, network load, but more from security point of view. So different segments have different security guidelines, and accordingly the network has been provisioned to you. The firewall rules, they are correspondingly defined that on this network you can only have these ports open. On this network, like supposing if it's a production environment, unless you submit your security audit clearance certificate, you cannot get 80 port opened. So that's a kind of a tough policies are being kind of put in. While and access to these machines cannot be provisioned over pure internet. You need to have a government VPN account. You need to have that kind of a system to be able to access. So those basic security and cost optimization has been done from the basic architecture of this cloud. Digital India, as you know, is one of the important initiatives launched by our new government last year. I think many of you must be knowing it has, and I understand, though not directly, but this e-voting is also, our voting is also a kind of initiative which is in the larger umbrella of our voting of Digital India. And in this Digital India, we early this month, 1st of July, we had a Digital India Week where Prime Minister launched a whole lot of new programs for enablement of Indian citizens into a digital era. Why I am highlighting this? To basically tell you 2 things, that today technologically we have reached to a place where we can cater to billion citizens of this country. Like if you have this MyGov was a program which was platform which was launched by government last year. It will be completing its 1 year, where today it's the largest collaborative platform between the government and the citizens. And over 1 million people are constantly engaging with government on this platform. They are giving suggestions onto new policies or policies under preparation. They also participate into existing delivery of certain services, or if there's anything, any amendment in any act is concerned. And this is also one of the large crowdsourcing platform. Government is using this platform in a big way in crowdsourcing, whether it is designing a logo for a particular scheme, or branding an institution, or coming up with things like writing a policy paper. So all kinds of assignments do come, and people are very enthusiastically. In fact, it becomes difficult for jury to find out the top 10 or top 5 because the extent of nominations is overwhelming. I mean, I personally, being in this area for so many years, was also initially wonderstruck when I saw the kind of response I saw in the initial years. This platform also runs on this cloud. Today we have over 5,000 virtual machines already configured on this cloud. Going forward to things like Digital Locker, which has been launched during Digital India Week, this is going to give each citizen of India, to begin with 1 gigabyte and going to 10 gigabyte of space onto a government infrastructure wherein you can keep all your documents in digital format, whether it is your mark sheets, whether it is your PAN card or any other thing. And whenever you have to submit, you simply have to give an address of this digital locker of that particular unique address. Every document will get simply submit. So the idea is this concept of attaching a whole lot of photocopy documents when you're trying to apply for any government application, any license, or going forward to even students, when young people, when they apply for jobs here and there, or mark sheets, copies and all, to get away with this in a short time. The project has just begun. It is already live, but that is what we are trying to sort of reach, to develop it into a platform, so which is again going to touch each citizen of India at one point of time. Prime Minister's own website, who you know is so popular in social media, also is being catered through this cloud. So that's just to give you a glimpse that this setup is now matured enough to take care of security dimensions as well as the traffic dimension, which is another aspect of remote voting. Cloud first policy is something which many countries have done, so we have also implemented for last 6 months and seen very encouraging results. As a matter of fact, for last 6 months we haven't we didn't have to allow any government department to co-locate their infrastructure or to buy servers. Everybody has finally agreed to move on to a cloud instead of buying their servers and pushing it. In fact, some people who had bought servers also, when we explained them how cloud, they said, you take this infrastructure, push it into your cloud, and I will only use cloud, and you can augment cloud with my servers. So those kinds of happy stories also have been there. But there has been a set of challenges also, because when you use these kinds of things onto this thing. So one thing which we're trying to do is, now we have this cloud in our Delhi data center where we have 5,000. Now we're trying to expand, because if we need more capacity, we need to expand these things. So we are expanding it to our data centers in Pune, Hyderabad, and some point we also see that these state data centers it can also be brought into the ambit of national cloud in two ways. Supposing if things like remote voting, and you want to let's say vote, and the purpose of remote voting is inclusive voting, where you want almost every citizen of India to be able to vote remotely, kind of a thing. So you will need kind of a geographic distribution of this load. So if for that particular week or that particular month, if I can bring the infrastructure or the compute capacity available in those data centers also in the ambit of national cloud, and to be able to offer services, or alternatively state government has any application which needs for a week much larger resource, so if they want to burst into a national cloud, they should be able to do. So to make these things happen smoothly, we're trying to build, we have an orchestration layer, but which is very, very primitive, looking at the kind of requirements we have put into ourselves. So we're trying to do an orchestration layer which will take care of, which will have all those things in a predefined fashion. So that anytime if you're a user of national cloud, you should be able to bust your load out, or to be able to distribute your applications across various nodes much more easily and at a very short notice. That is one thing. One thing which we learned in this national cloud is that when we built the cloud initially, as anybody in the international segment, we built it as self-service cloud. And so what happened? These departments or government administrations at the panchayat level, at the cloud level, at the block and district level, started applying for cloud directly. Since taking a cloud was not difficult, you only had to establish your government identity, and after that you are on it. But operating this cloud needed such a skill set, and that's where they started getting stuck. And then we realized that self-service is good, but for larger part of government, you need to have some kind of an intermediary service who basically hands on these government departments. Because what used to happen earlier, They used to buy this equipment, and there used to be an agency who used to provide this equipment, used to handhold them into these things, or agency who has developed a software used to handhold them into it. But here it was not so, because they were trying to operate themselves. So going forward, then we brought this concept of cloud coordinators. So what we have now, 2 cloud coordinators in every state, in every central government sector, who basically now helps or handhold these departments, which has been recently introduced concept, and kind of become an intermediary between the central group which is offering this cloud service and the end user, which is the government departments. And the cloud orientation cell is another thing which is there. We also have a help desk, which is not relevant at this point of time. Multi-location cloud is something we are going in a big way. There are 2 nodes in Hyderabad and Pune we are trying to bring at the scale of Delhi. Coming on to remote voting and the infrastructure. So there are different dimensions. Governance, in any case, you need to look into various governance. Lot of IT governance also you need to look into it. Legal aspect, we heard a lot in the morning today, so I did not touch. Identity is another element, but we're very fortunate to have this biometric based identification system, and large number of Indian citizens are already registered with this system. So that's a very positive thing, which becomes a challenge for many countries, that how do you really identify an individual remotely. Technology is going to play a very large role. Another thing, if you go, and especially if you're doing remote voting from the point of inclusivity, from the point of going into a rural part of the country, then you need to also get into this aspect of digital literacy. People have to be able to use these devices themselves to do, because if they do not do this, and again they take somebody's help to cast a vote, your purpose is not much served. That the basic purpose of having this free and fair election somewhere gets marred in this. So digital literacy drive also, somebody has to start. I mean, we have various programs under Digital India. Election Commission can join with those programs, and while we teach them a lot of other things, we can teach them these things going forward. Privacy and confidentially the individuals, where I think we need to have some legal dimensions also coming up, is another thing which need to be looked into. Coming to technology now, depends. See, election commission is already using technology. They are already using electronic voting machines. It's not that we are new to this thing. We have been already doing online registration of electorate and things like this. So it depends to what extent are you going to go for remote voting? Are you going for sending a ballot only and then getting it, or are you saying that I'll put electronic ballot online and submission also online? Or are I going to go a big bang where anybody can vote using its mobile phone? I mean, that's what is kind of a future in our country as far as e-governance. We feel more e-governance will happen through mobiles than through computers and laptops and devices. But that's how the penetration figures show. So the kind of technology you will require is different. The kind of infrastructure you will require will be different. While ICT infrastructure is one part, security is another important dimension. Another thing also somehow one has to look into is the software which you develop to achieve this process end to end. That software, we need to look into it, that how do we really build that software which does not have any information leak points, or is not vulnerable to be able to be probed at certain point. So a sound and sturdy software has to be written. Over and all, it should really be audited by 1, 2 or 3 independent group of experts. That is very, because if anything happens, any point of leak which gets discovered in that process, that can have a large implication. So that is something one has to really focus and see that what kind of technologies and tools you use, whether it's cryptographic or whether it is double envelope or whatever you may do. I mean, the whole lot of technologies available today, but how do you really deploy these technologies and build this solution is going to be a crux of the matter. And and then the auditing is very important, because generally whenever you do a system, whatever audit you do, you see from one perspective. You have to look from a different perspective. So that's why I'm saying instead of one, it should have multiple audit from multiple these things. That's very critical to this whole thing. Selection of tools and technologies, surely security has to be there for infrastructure, which has to be geared up. People also have to be made little, what should I say? They should also be made little it's sensitive towards these cybersecurity things. The basic thing that I should be able to discover that this mail is a kind of a spam mail, or there's some kind of presence of malware, at least the initial signs, which is otherwise also needed, not only for remote voting, the way we are getting to digital technology and way we are using for our personal transactions and financial transactions, it is needed for the citizens to be coming up and knowing those things. So maybe somewhere, maybe our department or somebody has to bring in drive to educate citizens on these things, whether remote voting, which will also become a prerequisite. So a lot of security attacks could be, which is at least on the client device, can be averted if citizens are being made aware of it. It's a large toll, but I think somewhere has to begin otherwise also too. Overall, if you look at it, we as a country, I feel that today we are into a very good ecosystem with a lot of things which many countries do not have are already in place. There's a lot to be done, but if you look at it, our identification, we have Aadhaar, who has a target of touching every citizen in another few years. You have IT, we already have an IT Act. Many countries do not even have an IT Act. You have an IT Act, and if we have people, legal people like the one you, the speaker today, and we all put our minds together, I'm sure we can always bring in those amendments along with the Election Commission. And besides IT Act, some Election Act, all those things will also need some. But there's always, you have base acts, you only have to see how do you really address those concerns. And then you have a cloud infrastructure which gives you that scalability which will help you achieve these applications. You have a mobile penetration through which you can really get into a big inclusive way. Technology is available, and we as a country are proud of having the strength of software and technology we have in this, which we definitely can leverage upon. And broadband network through which we have these community service centers and all, which also can be roped in when you get into these voting things. So I personally feel that, I'm looking forward that the next Lok Sabha election should be through remote voting. Only flip side is we lose that holiday which we used to have on that election day. Thank you.